Hi, it's Rachel from 7 in All, and today I'm here to bring you an epic video all about early reader books. Well, I guess this may only be an epic video if you're into books and you're into reading and early readers and kindergarten and first grade and all that, but I am, so to me, this is epic. If you've been around the homeschool world long, you'll know that there are a lot of opinions about teaching reading. And for me, I would more say I have pretty much no super strongly held opinion about how to teach reading. I think reading is awesome, kids need to learn to read, and every kid is gonna have a slightly different journey. And what works for different kids is gonna look different, and different families, different teachers, different situations. And the end goal is the same, but the journey is gonna look different. With some kids and some families, they may not end up using early readers practically at all. By 5 years old, I was reading novels. Now, should a 5-year-old read novels? That's another question. But I didn't really have this experience of using early readers so much as a kid. But with other kids, you're gonna be using very basic phonics designed or sight word designed books up until the age of perhaps 8 or 9. So different kids are going to have different journeys, and some families might opt to skip early readers altogether and just have their kids jump into reading real books right away. But I believe early readers can be a really useful tool for a lot of families and a lot of kids, and I'm here to kind of show you the inside of 7 different kind of big names in the early reader field. This is not all of them, there are definitely more, but I thought 7 was enough, and this was most of our family's collection. You could also ask, why do we have 7 different early reader series, and there are good reasons for that, but that's another video. So I'm going to take you in, show you kind of the pros and cons of different ones, how they differ, because when you're just looking at the internet and everything is saying early reader, beginning reader, phonics, learn to read, then you can kind of start to get overwhelmed and be like, where do I start? Where do I even begin? And this is where to show, just to really show you what each series is like, kind of talk about what they're good for and what they're not good for, to hopefully help you as you're choosing so that you can spend your money in the wisest way possible, pick out the books that you and your kids are going to enjoy the most and that's going to fit your teach how to read style the best. What is your favorite early reader series? Are you using one that we haven't used yet? Go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section below. For each of these books, I'm going to take you on a look inside, and I will try to link to the websites where they are sold down below so that you can easily access them if you see the right one for your family and you're like, yes, that's it. So I'm going to show you, I'll talk about it a little bit and then I'll show you inside to show how they work. The first one I'm going to show you is the Sing, Spell, Read, and Write Phonetic Storybook Readers. And not all of these, or some of the different readers that I'm going in to show you are part of full reading curriculums. Others are completely not part of full curriculums. So there's actually quite a wide variety here. But these are part of a full reading curriculum that's meant to stretch from first or kindergarten through first grade. There are 17 or 18 books in the full series. I didn't grab all of them. I grabbed this many of them to show you. And our family has been using Sing, Spell, Read, and Write for probably around 20 years, maybe slightly less. A really long time. This is not the first edition of Sing, Spell, Read, and Write. They were updated several years back, probably more than a decade now. So these are the newer Sing, Spell, Read, and Write books, and I'll talk a little bit about this program now. All right, Sing, Spell, Read, and Write. These are part of a very complete, comprehensive style of phonics reading program. It involves songs, which I've had those songs memorized since my childhood. So they are catchy enough, both for alphabet sounds and later blends and different types of sounds. They start very basic. So I'll show you how this works. There is a list of all the words that your child will read in this book. This is the Apple book. What sight words are called in Sing, Spell, Read, and Write is rule breakers. And when they show up in the text in the earliest books, they have a little kind of jail over them to help children remember that they're rule breakers. And then they have this just little book. Gus is hidden somewhere in each of the books, so your child can keep an eye out for Gus. But you see, we have a page with pictures, very simple sentences. This is very carefully designed, so you don't have words in the book that don't have the vowel that you're learning about, or anything else other than the words that your child should be able to read at this stage. And it is a very simple, very basic story. Then as you move on, comes next. As you move on in the stories, you're gradually adding, I'll show you, get a few new rule breakers in each new book. And then now you're having words as well as words. And you move through the vowels. Here, let's do This is the one about Gus. Get a few more rule breakers in every book. And now you're able to read all short vowel sounds. And so they're all incorporated together in sentences. And this goes alongside workbooks that have comprehension. There are sort of like tests that do comprehension after every book or after every story. There are different workbook pages that involve handwriting, spelling, practicing with different pieces of words, so like beginning blends and ending blends, and writing in different parts of words. This is an older program. I think it is very thorough, very well designed. So that is Sing, Spell, Read, and Write. The next one I will be showing you is Bob books. Now these are really famous. They're not necessarily their own complete curriculum, but you can find a lot of resources that are aligned to be used with Bob books for comprehension, spelling, handwriting, different kinds of activities like that are kind of based on Bob books because these are so famous. This is just set 1. There are 5 sets of little tiny books that are easy to read, very phonics based. So I'll show you what these are like. And these are the famous Bob books. This is the whole series of set 1. And these are much shorter, just very, very short individual books. They list out the beginning sounds that you'll need in each book at the beginning. The sentences are not necessarily like big sentences. They're very short to begin with. They do bring in some words that to me feel a little bit like a surprise, like suddenly we have on here, without necessarily really explicitly teaching them, but you can teach these words using additional resources. So these are very simple, black and white with some accents of color throughout the book. This is the Little Red series, so you have the red accents. And things are getting a little more complicated. So they start with the vowel sound and move on to and then with time, now we're getting into more sentences. Now we have words. We do have some sight words in there like the and is, but they're not necessarily expressly taught in the books itself. But with additional resources, you could be teaching those, or if you're just using these as readers alongside of another phonics or reading program, that will be totally fine. They do some cool things. I like this one because it has sentences that incorporate reading numerals. So I thought, like, that's cool to have kids be able to switch from reading words to reading numbers there within the sentence. And that is what the beginner Bob books are like. Very short, not intimidating. The goal here is to get kids excited about they can sit down and read a whole book. Even if that whole book only includes a really short handful of words, it gives them a sense of accomplishment. Next one that I'll go into is the Usborne very first reading series. And these are not part of its whole comprehensive language arts or phonics curriculum, but they have some definite advantages, and I'll show you what these are like in a minute. All right, and these are the Usborne very first reading series. So Usborne has a lot of different readers, and I can do a video about different kinds of Usborne readers sometime. But unlike some of the other series, these do go in order of book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, and that's because they are getting harder as you go. So I'm going to point out some of the cool features and different features about these. And so you do have instructions here for you. But these are cooperative readers, and I like that. So the parent reads this part, and then the child reads this part. So this is great for when your child can't read many words, and beginner stories are really, really boring because you can't use many words. So this way, the parent can read the words that kind of make it into a story, but the children are able to read a few basic words to complete the story, and there you're getting a cooperative reading experience there. Now again, you can't be starting this necessarily right first thing off the bat if it's going to be intimidating for a kid to be switching between, you know, this sound versus and it and is, making a z instead of a s sound. So I would maybe use these after they've had at least a little bit of reading experience, and then start getting into the more kind of fun stories here, because it does progress kind of fast in a sense from one book to the next. So this is the story, and then I'll show you what's cool that they have at the end. Now, they do have notes for the teachers and kind of some guidance for you. Okay. Then at the end of each book, sorry, trying to work one-handed here. At the end of each book, they have some kind of little puzzles. They ask you to retell the story, which I think is a really awesome skill to have, awesome skill to promote in kids, narration or retelling the story. Choosing the right word for each picture, which requires careful reading. They're just switching one letter and showing that the meaning changes. Here, finding words that rhyme. So they have little activities after you complete each book, which is really cool. Then here is book 2. So you can see it's getting a little bit more complicated as you go. We now have CK at the end of words. We have more vowels in our short vowel words. And each book does end with those little activities, which are very thoughtfully designed, a good way. I think it builds a good practice of when you finish a book, you get to talk about it. You get to think about what it meant. Think about what you read. So many kids, especially at the beginning, they just try to read, get finished with it, and not even spend a minute thinking about it. So I do really appreciate that aspect because I think it's building a good practice, something that we should do even as adults. When we read a book, don't just put it down and forget about it when you're done with it. You should try to remember it. Think about, why did you read that book? What did you learn from that book? What happened in that book? So we're still following the same. Parent reads this, and then child reads this. And that progresses throughout the very first reading series, very first reading books, which there are more of them than this. I just grabbed a few. Then this is the first reading. So this is what you would move on to after you finish the very first reading series. And this is for a child who can read but is still growing comfortable with it, but they're pretty comfortable with phonics and with sight words. But they have very short, non-intimidating amounts of words on the page, which is nice. So that's what these look like. And of course, they're very colorful. They do have the activities at the back of the book in the first reading series as well. So you can see what those are like. These are the Abeka readers, and I grabbed the first grade ones. I meant to grab the kindergarten readers too, but I didn't. But it's the same curriculum, and I can kind of talk about how this curriculum works, how the readers are integrated into the full language arts curriculum, and why you might want to use the readers on their own. All right, here is Abeka's early readers. These are the first grade readers, so they're not going to be as basic as the beginner Bob books or the beginner Fun Tales or even the beginning of Sing, Spell, Read, and Write, because where that comes in is in the kindergarten readers. And the kindergarten readers are more designed like, I would say, consumables, just like really tiny little booklets that you probably wouldn't necessarily keep from kid to kid, and you could let the kids color or write in. These are more books that you would keep and reuse again and again. You can probably tell ours have been used for a very long time. These books are probably about 15 years old. So this is book 1-4. So this is about halfway through first grade. This is 1-3, and this is the handbook for reading. Now these do go along with Abeka's letters and sounds and language arts workbooks. So they have all the different sounds. You begin by reviewing the short vowels, reviewing the sounds of consonants, working on blending with this, and in the curriculum guides you're instructed what pages to go over this each day. We don't really use the curriculum guides anymore, but we have used this book quite a few times and just kind of gone through maybe a page a day with kids who are needing a little bit of extra practice in blending or identifying letters, identifying sounds, being able to put words together as you go. So you move from blending to putting endings on the blends. Very phonics-based program. As you get further into it, you start learning different kinds of special sounds, being able to read little Bible verses or things of that sort. But this is not necessarily the fun book. This is kind of the drilling practice book, which Abeka does like drilling. These are more fun. They have little stories to be reading. So you can tell it's a lot of words on a page. And for some kids, this can be fun, while for other kids at first grade, this can be really intimidating. You have little comprehension questions after each story to make you think. Here they have, like, these would be the 2 sounds being introduced in the curriculum at this time, if you're using the full curriculum as well. They have little poems. They have little writing in places, which no one in our family was supposed to write in these books. So there must have been, at some point in the past 15 years, a child who did not follow instructions. So these are when you, asking for pretty big chunks of reading. So this is going to be by mid-first grade. They're expecting a pretty fluent reader. Now that's not always going to be the case. So I am a big proponent of using what a kid can read and going with what they can do, rather than trying to go with what's necessarily at a certain grade level. But those are what Abeka readers are like. This is Fun Tales. Fun Tales is from Sunlight, and it's incorporated in their kindergarten language arts and learn to read curriculum. All right, and this is Fun Tales. If this looks a little bit familiar, it's because, at least in my opinion, these have a lot of similarities with the idea of Bob books. They are really short, really, really basic sentences, and it's the idea of giving the child the experience of reading a complete book all on their own, right off the bat. It tells you what letters are in the book. It gets gradually more complicated and includes more things as you go. Just really silly, basic stories. Very simple black and white pictures. They include more sounds, more letters. But one little cool thing that I do really like about Fun Tales is that on the back of each book, they have a little bit of information about the real life animal that the character in the story is. So here we get a rat, here we get a moose, here we get a rabbit, an alligator. So that's something also that you can talk to your kids about. We got a spider and a ladybug in this one. Gives you a little bit of information. This does go with the Sunlight K program, and they do a really good job of incorporating lots of different subjects into reading and learning from reading. That's what Sunlight is all about, learning from literature. So that is Fun Tales. And now for something entirely different. This is Keywords with Peter and Jane by Ladybird. And this is not a phonetics-based reader program at all. There are 3 books that go with each level. I think there's, at least in the initial set, there's 12 kind of levels. This is level 3, and there's 3A, 3B, and 3C that are different ways of working with the same words. This is more of a sight reading. This is the philosophy of learning commonly used, commonly read words, the most common words, learning to recognize those words and reading through that method, which I personally am more of a phonics girl, but the interesting fact, phonics doesn't actually work the best for every kid. Some kids actually, sight reading makes more sense just with the way their brains work. They're able, some kids who are not able to learn to read with phonics really take to sight reading. And these books have been hugely, widely used, widely sold. It's not necessarily the first approach that I would go for, but it's something that sometimes works surprisingly well. I'll show you what these are like. All right, and here's the keyword series. I just grabbed the 3 books for book 3. We only have through book 4 in this series, so this is not at the beginning. A lot of these words are words that have already been learned, but then what's being introduced in this is play and up. So all the other words have been memorized in books 1 and 2. They have really little, really basic stories, and they're introducing new words throughout. So this is the little reader where you get your new words introduced, and you're having them repeated again and again throughout the page. Then this book gives you extra practice with reading similar sentence patterns and similar words that you read in the first book. So it's going over the same thing, same words, but a different story, different situations. The same words are used repeatedly throughout the book. And again, it seems like a lot of words, but a lot of these words were introduced in 1 and 2. So it's using very similar sentence patterns, replacing different words into similar sentence patterns for this more sight word reading approach. Then this is the one where they say that phonics is more involved. For phonics lovers, it still doesn't really feel like a very strong phonics system, but they have different kind of activities, what you would do. And some of these you're supposed to write down in a notebook. And here you're choosing words from words that they've learned to fill in the same sentence pattern with different words. Filling in the same repeated sentence pattern with different words. This is definitely not something that is going to appeal to everybody. I'll be honest, it's not my favorite for sure. But a lot of people have had a lot of success with teaching kids to read using these resources. And we have also seen that they really can work when phonics isn't working. So that's what these are like. And these I had to show you. This is the Life of Fred Eden series, beginner readers or early readers. This is not necessarily a teach you how to read reader. I think to use these you need to have some basic beginning ability to read, basic phonics knowledge of basic sight words, because they kind of start in at a level where you do need to be able to know all your sounds, be blending sounds together and like that. I'll show you what these are like. I do really like these for some purposes. And this is Life of Fred. And I'm going to admit, I really, really do like these. Part of my problem with reading and early readers is that they're boring. And I like these because they're not boring. So these are for kids who do have some experience with already knowing how to read. I mean, I want to go. There's a lot of complicated sounds in that sentence alone. So don't be using these straight off with a brand new reader. I think these are first grade level, but there's not a lot of words on each page. They are funny, little interesting stories about Fred and Kingy. They're all following Fred going on vacation to a lake, building a house, running into lots of problems. I like the stop throughout this book. It's making the child think about what's going on. It's very quirky, very unique image style that is similar to what is used throughout the whole Fred Math series. So if your kid likes Fred Math and likes these characters, they are probably going to really enjoy this. Just a few words per page. It's truly telling a story, making you think about things. There's actual little chapters in each book, which is cute because the kids would get excited about reading a chapter. This is the early reader that I've actually had kids get excited about the most, more than any other. It's not as colorful as Usborne, but this has been the one where it's kids like, can I read another chapter? Can I read another chapter? Because they want to know what happens. It's maybe 18 books in the series, and a lot happens. It's pretty fun. Kinky packs all sorts of stuff, which comes in really handy on their vacation because they end up building a whole house and learning about how electricity and appliances work and everything. And the kids really like this guy. But so you can see a little bit. They teach colors along the way. Each book has its own color, so you can kind of go into that. If you want to know what is included in the concept of the book, you can look at the parent note at the beginning for just little things that you can go into more if you'd like to. So that is the Life of Fred early reading series. And these, they are true pleasure. They're true fun early readers. Not to be used necessarily to teach reading, but to be used maybe to fall in love with reading. And that is my epic mega comparison and contrast and take a look inside early readers and beginner readers. I hope this is a useful resource for you. If you like this video, do give it a thumbs up, and you can subscribe to our channel, 7 and All, for more talk about useful books, homeschool adventures, and all that good stuff. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!